So what we do is we complete the squares, and probably when you completed the squares, you must have got something like कोई बता सकता है क्या आया था स्क्वायर करने पे?
Yes, ma'am. X plus 1 का whole square.
X plus 1 whole square.
Plus b 3 whole square to 9.
X plus 1 whole square plus
3y, ma'am.
3y minus 3 whole square
Equals to 9.
right. Now, the moment you have a plus in between, that means it should be an ellipse. Okay,
Yes,
so we try to reduce this equation to that of an ellipse. So it becomes x plus 1 whole square upon 9 plus 3y minus 3 whole square upon 9 equal to 1.
ma'am.
Right? Which can be further simplified as x plus 1 whole square upon 9, and from here I can take 3 common and 9 gets cancelled, and you are left with y minus 1 whole square upon 1 equal to 1. Am I right? This is the equation you get?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Now see, now you compare this equation with the general equation of an ellipse. क्या था? X square by a square plus y square by b square equal to 1. Right? So this represents an ellipse with center 0, 0. Right? And if a is greater than b, then you have x-axis as the major axis and y-axis as the minor axis. Is that right? So now here, if you compare this equation with that of an ellipse, the general, then what are you getting? A square as 9, number 1, and b square as 1. This is the first thing that we observe. Yeah. So obviously your A, I'll take it as plus 3 because I know we have to extend on both the sides of the center. So plus 3 units on both the sides. So I take A as 3 and B as 1 because we have to construct a box with A and 3, right? And this term, the numerator of both the expressions, this will give us the center. See here the center was 0, 0, right? So it's like x minus h, y minus k. We have translated, okay? So that means your h is how much? Minus 1. And your k plus 1.
1.
So that means your center of the ellipse is minus 1 plus 1. Is that okay? So that means now you have an ellipse with center as minus 1 plus 1. So if I just look at my coordinate axis, so that means, see, x is mine. So I have my coordinate axis somewhere, something like this. Okay. So that this axis is the x-axis, this axis is the y-axis. So I have it extending here. Now, minus 1, 1. Minus 1, 1 means x coordinate is minus 1 and y coordinate is plus 1. So that means this point becomes the center. Right?
Yes.
Now, since my ellipse is now translated, see, isko translation bolte hai na, when you shift your coordinate axis at, or when we say, when we shift the origins by using the transformations x minus h, y minus k, we are redefining our axis, then this is basically translation. Okay, in a way, what is happening is that if this was your coordinate plane, you are just putting up, and in such a manner you are moving it in such a manner, that means you are moving it either left, right, up, down, but you are not tilting your coordinate axis. Okay, it's like you have placed two matchsticks together, right, perpendicular to each other, and you are just you've just pulled it up. You can either move it left, right, up, down. You can't rotate it. Okay, so this procedure is that of translation. So what is happening is that you are replacing this point by this point. Okay, so this becomes your center. Now you have A3, B1. Okay, so what do? You complete the box of course, if A3, B1, that means your C square is what? A square minus B square. So C square is 8, which is, I think, plus minus 2 root 2. Am I right? Right. So accordingly, you construct a box here. So that means this will be your major axis. This will be your minor axis because your A square was greater than 1. So you move how many units to the left and how many units?
3. 3 units to the left.
3 units to the left. From where?
From minus 1.
From 1.
Minus 1. So this is your 1 endpoint and 3 units here. So 1, 2 and 3. This is the other endpoint. Okay. Similarly, 1 unit up and down because your B was 1, right? So that means 1 point here and 1 point here. Now you complete the box, something like this, and you get an ellipse like this, something like this. Is that okay?
मैम पॉजिटिव साइड में 2 पे नहीं आएगा?
Yes, ma'am, 2 पे ही आएगा.
हाँ, सॉरी, मैंने 1 यूनिट और एक्सटेंड कर दिया है ना?
Yes.
Right. This will be your ellipse. This one. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what if your equation is something like x square minus 4y square plus 2x plus 8y minus 7 equal to 0. Supposing we have to sketch this. Then what? Again, it's not a circle, it's not a parabola. And you will realize that because with y square you have a negative term, so it has to be a hyperbola. So when you complete the squares, what equation do you get? इसको करो साथ.
X plus 1 whole square minus 2y plus 2 whole square equal to 4.
X plus 1 whole square minus 2y minus 2 whole square equal to
Ma'am plus 2y plus 2 whole square.
माइनस अगर ब्रैकेट में ले रहे हो तो ओके लेट्स सी x square plus 1 plus 2x minus 4y square minus 4. Okay, it should be, you are saying that it should be plus. एक बार ही चेक करो फिर से. According to me, it should be minus. मैंने ब्रैकेट कर दिया फिर भी. Just cross check it again and then I'll see. हो सकता है मैंने गलती करी हो.
Yes,
okay.
minus here.
और चेक कर लो.
मैम माइनस आएगा.
मैम इट्स माइनस.
माइनस तो मतलब मैंने ठीक लिखा.
Yes, it is correct, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. ठीक है. Is that okay now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That means अभी बिल्कुल पहले जैसा हो गया ना. I can write it as x plus 1 whole square upon 4 minus, now can you simply, I mean ultimately तो
y
equal to 1 यही बनेगा ना.
Yes, ma'am.
पहले वाली इक्वेशन में 3 कॉमन था, इसमें 2 कॉमन होके we'll get this. ठीक है. नाउ यहाँ तक हो गया ना सबका?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
ठीक है. So now because I have a minus sign here, so it cannot be an ellipse, right? So I have to compare the equation with this standard equation, x square by a square minus y square by b square equal to 1, which represents a hyperbola, right?
Hyperbola.
And because now see, you have a square as 4 and b square as 1. So that means what? That means what is your focal axis and what is your conjugate axis?
Focal
X
axis
is
is x-axis and conjugate
Focal
axis is
conjugate X is Y axis.
Now see, we won't say that focal axis is the x-axis because our center is not 0, 0. Okay? So
Line
our center is now again minus 1, 1, जैसे पहले वाले केस में था. ठीक है ना? So we'll say that focal axis is a line parallel to x-axis. Okay, not x-axis. Okay, why? Because your a square is greater than b square. Similarly, the other axis, which is your conjugate axis, this will be a line parallel to y-axis. Is that okay?
yes,
This
ma'am.
is how I'm going to write, right? See, now comes the crucial part here. Because it's a hyperbola, it is going to have, see, hyperbola है तो मतलब मैं बहुत छोटी सी इधर शेप बना रही हूँ. जो हमारा सेंटर से पास करता था, तो हमारे पास दो एसिम्प्टोट्स थे यहाँ से जाते हुए, एंड देन वी हैड द टू ब्रांचेस ऑफ द हाइपरबोला, समथिंग लाइक दिस. ठीक है, वो गलती से मेरी टच हो रही है, ठीक है, बट दे वोंट टच. ओके, they become parallel to these lines. This is what it looks like. Now, in this case, what do we need? We need these two straight lines, which are actually the asymptotes. And wherever these two straight lines intersect, that becomes the center of the hyperbola, right? Then from this center extending to both the sides on the focal axis, we get the vertices, okay? And accordingly, then we trace the parabola. We complete the box and then we trace the parabola. Yahi karte hain hum, right? Now, what we can do here now is, in the case of a standard parabola, things were simpler because y equal to plus minus x.
Your voice is not coming.
सबको या सिर्फ तुम्हें?
मैम एक मिनट के लिए रुकी थी, अब मैम हमें भी नहीं आ रही है.
ओके, अब आ रही है?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll repeat it again, right? So what I was trying to say is that in case we have a standard equation of a hyperbola, then the two asymptotes are given by y equal to plus minus x. Okay, see, this is what a standard hyperbola would look like, something where equation is x square by a square minus y square by b square equal to 1. So we have y equal to plus x is a straight line passing through the origin, inclined at an angle of 45 degree. Y equal to minus x is a line passing through the origin and perpendicular to this line, right? So once we have these two asymptotes with us, we just draw the two branches of the hyperbola. So basically what is important here is, we know the center, fine, plus 1, minus 1 plus 1 becomes the center, okay, we know. Again, that means this hyperbola kinds of, just get shifted, not from the origin, but from another point, minus 1, 1, okay. So again, our center is somewhere in the second quadrant, right? Now, to either we need the box, or even if we have the equations of the asymptotes, we get an idea, what kind of straight lines or what kind of asymptotes are we going to get. अब इस केस में भी हमारे पास दो options हैं. See, what we can do is, if I just, I'm just moving on. If I just look at this equation that we have reduced to, what do you conclude from here? That your A is 2, okay?
B is equal.
B is 1. And of course, in this case, since c square is a square plus b square करके आता है, तो your c is √5. ठीक है, इस केस में उल्टा हो जाता है ना, your c square is actually a square plus b square now. hyperbola. ठीक है ना, यही हो जाता है. So what, in fact, if you just see, I mean, your coordinate axis now, so you have -1 here, plus -2, -3. I'll have -4 here also, and again +1, +2, then +1, +2. I don't need much points here, so -1, -2. Now see, -1 +1. This is the point with coordinates -1, +1. Okay. Now this becomes the center now, right? Now, how do you complete a box now? That means if this becomes the center, and since your x square was with a positive term and y square was with a negative term, that means we have concluded that a line passing through -1 +1 and parallel to x-axis will be your focal axis, and this will be your conjugate axis. Okay, na? Now, if you complete the box, how do you do it?
On the parallel x-axis, ma'am, it is extended 2 units. And
Right. So you have 2 units matlab idhar and 2 units matlab idhar. In points पे आ गए? Right. One पे. हाँ, जैसे अभी इससे पहले वाले एलिप्स में भी तो इसी तरह का ही बॉक्स बना था ना?
ना 1 पे आएगा ना,
Yes,
पॉजिटिव
ma'am.
बनेंगे ना,
जी, क्या चीज?
1 पे आएगी वर्टेक्स.
मैम फर्स्ट क्वाड्रेंट में 1 पे पॉइंट आएगा 2 यूनिट.
यस मैम.
yes, ma'am.
तो
अब
2
डिस्टेंस 2 है ना.
अच्छा, A is 2 in this case ना?
Yes, ma'am.
यस.
Okay, मैं वो 3 दिमाग में था मेरे. एक मिनट, I'll draw this again. Your A was 2 and your B was 1. ठीक है ना? And your C was √5. Because focus भी कई बारी हमको दिखाना होता है. ठीक है? -1, -2, -3. This was -4. 1, 2, 3. Okay. This was the center. Okay. And this is your focal axis. And this will be your coordinate axis. So this point was -1, 1. So you have 2 units here and 2 units here. That means you are here. Ab theek hai?
यस मैम.
And then 1 unit up and down. theek hai na? So this point and this point. So this is how we are going to complete the box now. This will be the box.
यस मैम.
Right. Now, this will be your first one asymptote. ठीक है ना? Diagonals में से ही आएगा ना? From passing through the center, the 2 diagonals of this box will be your asymptotes, right? And this vertex, this has coordinates what? 1, 1. And this has coordinates -3, 1. Right? And this will be your branch. Something like this. ऐसा ही बनेगा?
Ma'am.
Right. Now, sometimes what happens is that sketching is okay. Sketch we can do with just the knowledge of center A and B. You know, like sometimes they say, okay, plot the focus also. Okay. So what do you have to do? You have to move C units. So to plot the focus, sometimes the problem can be write the equations of the 2 asymptotes. Are you getting the point? So to write the equations of the 2 asymptotes, the best thing is, see, if you just look at this hyperbola, x square by a square minus y square by b square equal to 1. Right? Now, in this equation, if I, instead of 1, if I equate that to 0, right? What do you get? Y square equal to x square, which means y equal to plus minus x.
Yes, ma'am.
So these become the 2 equations of the asymptotes of this hyperbola. So basically what you have to do is, see, if you have the equation, अब जैसे इस केस में हमारा hyperbola क्या आ गया था? X plus 1 whole square upon 4 minus y minus 1 whole square upon 1 equal to 1. ये थी ना हमारी equation. Now, instead of this, just equate this equation to 0. X plus 1 whole square upon 4 minus y minus 1 whole square upon 1 equal to 0. And simplify this. Okay? You will get, basically this actually means that y minus 1 whole square is equal to, क्या आएगा? X plus 1 whole square by 4.
Yes, ma'am.
Or y minus 1 is equal to plus minus half into x plus 1.
Yes, ma'am.
अब इसको सिंप्लीफाई कर दो, ये दो स्ट्रेट लाइंस आ गई ना हमारे पास.
Yes.
Simplify this, you will get the two equations. Okay, एक आ जाएगी y is equal to half x plus half plus 1, that is plus 3 by 2. एक आ जाएगी y is equal to minus half x minus 1 plus 1. That's it. है ना? Minus half x, it will be minus half plus 1. So plus 1 by 2. यही आएंगी equations. So these will be the two equations of the asymptotes. ये जो दो lines हमने plot करी है. Is this okay? बोलो हाँ या नहीं?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now see, the point is that okay, once you have plotted this, जैसे हम उस दिन भी बात कर रहे थे, अभी हम rotation पे बाद में आएंगे. The question is कि हम why are we doing it and where are we going to use it? Okay, so for this, these conic sections, they satisfy what is called as the reflection properties. They have a typical reflection properties which they satisfy. Okay, now if you just look into your book, then it's your theorem number 10.4.4 of N10. Okay, which gives you this property of the conic sections. Okay, and it says that, like for example, it basically parabola की ज़्यादा use होती है. So they have stated the reflection property of a parabola because हम उसी को ही use करते हैं. So what it says is कि if you just read the statement, it says that the tangent line. So if you have a parabola, okay, something like this. Okay, now if I have a parabola, that means this is the axis of the parabola because I have a parabola like this. Now if I pick up any point P on this parabola and I draw a tangent here, something like this, right? The tangent line to this point, right? Now from this point, you draw a line which is parallel to the axis of the parabola. Okay, so that means you have a line something like this, parallel to the axis of the parabola, something like this. Okay, now this tangent line makes some angle with this line passing through the point and parallel to the axis, right? And this theorem says that the tangent line at a point P on a parabola makes equal angles with the line through P parallel to the axis of symmetry and the line through P and the focus. मतलब अगर हम यहाँ पे ले लें तो somewhere here is focus. So if you draw a line passing through P and the focus, then this angle, you know, which this line makes with the tangent and the line passing through P and parallel to x-axis, these two angles are going to be the same. Okay, so basically this angle is also alpha and this angle is also alpha. So maybe I'm not able because I have not placed the focus properly, but if you do it in a proper parabola, you will realize it. So similarly, if you change the point, but then this property always remains the same. Okay, and it is this reflection property of parabola which is used in optics, or even have you seen the satellites? आई मीन, और सैटेलाइट्स और डिश जो हमारे घरों में लगा होता है, या
Yes, ma'am.
जो हमारे इनकी कार्स की हेडलाइट्स होती हैं, राइट? अगर हम बाहर से उसका ग्लास हटाएं तो उसके अंदर का कभी देखा है कैसा शेप होता है उसका? हैज एनीबडी सीन इट?
Convex.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
कैसा शेप होता है? It looks like convex, but actually it's a parabola.
Yes, ma'am. Parabolic.
Yes,
Because,
ma'am.
because what happens is that when you, and like if you see your dish antenna, you have the receptor right at the center, और उसमें एक distance होता है छोटा सा. That is placed at your focus. Okay? So whenever you have rays or signals coming, they get reflected at equal angles. So what you get basically is a broader spectrum. ठीक है? जो हमारी कार की हेडलाइट से जब लाइट स्प्रेड होएगी, जब उसमें बल्ब में से लाइट निकला, उसके बाद वो रिफ्लेक्ट हुआ हर तरह से, और जब हमारे को स्पेक्ट्रम मिला, इट बिकम्स ब्रॉडेंड. So that is why it is used like this, so that you are able to, the angles, this reflection properties. Similarly, you have a reflection properties of ellipse, you have reflection properties of hyperbolas where it is used. So because practically हम हमेशा सब चीजें parabolic shape की होती हैं, तो इसलिए उसका एप्लीकेशन ज्यादा दिखता है. ठीक है? बट हाइपरबोला यूज करते हैं नेविगेशंस में, सबमरीन्स में, बिकॉज दे नीड. अब होता क्या है कि जब पानी के अंदर कोई वेव जा रही है, तो उसमें एक तो ड्यू टू अ वाटर मीडियम ऑल्सो things are going to get reflected. So especially in case of navigations, hyperbolic reflection properties are used. In case of light and optics, we basically use the parabolic uh, reflection properties. Okay, so just go through this reflection properties of the conic sections and you will see that where they are applied. जैसे hyperbolic बता रही हूँ ना नेविगेशन के लिए, like when a signal is sent from either a ship or a submarine to some base at land, that signal always travels in the shape of a hyperbola. You'll see, read it somewhere, even it's given in Google also. You can just go through it and just like a story, and you'll be able to appreciate it.
प्रूव करने के लिए तो नहीं आएगी ना?
नहीं, this is just for your understanding. You don't have to prove them. Proof book में दिया भी नहीं हुआ है. Okay, you don't have to prove it, right? Now comes the case when, say, supposing you have a situation where you have to sketch a parabola, and the shape is something like this. इस तरह का बन गया. Okay. Now the axis of this parabola is not parallel to the coordinate axis, neither to x-axis nor to y-axis. But in fact, this axis is inclined at some angle to the coordinate axis. Okay. So in case, अब इस केस में क्या हो रहा है, जैसे मैंने कहा था कि तुमने अपना एक कोऑर्डिनेट सिस्टम बनाया, दो मैचस्टिक्स को एक दूसरे के बीच में चिपका के, right? Earlier, what we were doing is we were just pulling them up, down, left, right, and so on and so forth. Now what you are doing is you are tilting them. So basically you have rotated your coordinate axis now. Okay. So now when there is a rotation, तो अब एक एंगल भी बीच में आ गया. अभी तक क्या हो रहा था, हमारे पास एक्स वाई थे, वी वर हैविंग ईदर प्लस एच प्लस के और माइनस एच माइनस के, एंड वी वर जस्ट शिफ्टिंग द ओरिजिन देयर. उसमें हम ट्रांसलेशन कर रहे थे, राइट? हियर व्हाट वी आर डूइंग इज, since we are rotating the axis also, so that means we have an angle of rotation also in between playing some important role. Okay, so that means now the procedure to sketch such conics is not going to be the same as that we were doing in translation things, because उसमें तो हमने सिर्फ origin shift किया, हमने अपना perfect square को complete किया, and we got the equations as similar to the earlier ones that we had. But in this case, what we are doing is, it's like, अगर हम बात करें, मैं अब ये मेरा ओरिजिनल एक्स वाई प्लेन है, ठीक है, if this is my x dash, no, I won't call it as x dash, I'll just call it as xy, right? Now it's like, अब इसमें देखो, अब हमको क्या करना है, अपने इस ये x6 जो है इसको उठा के हमको यहाँ ले जाना है। अगर हम ऐसे बात करें तो अगर मैं इस एक्सिस को उठा के मुझे यहाँ लेके जाना है, so that means what I have to do is I'm not changing the origin right now because मुझे translation आता है, right? So I'm just keeping this point fixed, the origin fixed, I'm just tilting it, right? So that means what have I done? I have made another set of coordinate axes, something like this, okay? Yeah. And this I'm calling it as x dash y dash. Okay. तो इसका मतलब मेरा जो ओरिजिनल सिस्टम ऑफ, इसका मतलब अब क्या हुआ, तुमने अपनी नोटबुक को टिल्ट कर दिया, राइट? अब क्या हुआ, तुमने और कुछ नहीं चेंज किया, पोजीशन उसकी चेंज नहीं करी, बट हमने अपने एक्सिस को टिल्ट कर दिया। इसका मतलब जो बाउंड्री नोटबुक की मुझे यहाँ दिख रही थी वो अब कहाँ दिख रही है, इस लाइन के अराउंड, राइट? अब मैंने सपोजिंग ये रोटेट किया इसको बाय एन एंगल ऑफ थीटा, supposing, okay? Now if I take any point p here, okay, let us not write the, say supposing जिसके original coordinates थे xy, मतलब अब see इस p के भी तो मेरे पास दो एड्रेस हो जाएंगे ना, p is xy when I see them in the xy coordinate plane, okay, but then this will have some coordinates x dash y dash if I see them in the x dash y dash coordinate system. Right. Now, if I see them in the XY coordinate system, then to know this address, supposing, अभी मेरा O तो O ही है, ये मेरा change नहीं हुआ, right? Say supposing this OP, I'm sorry, आज मैंने ना गलत experiment शुरू कर दिया. OP is R, okay? And say supposing this angle is alpha now. Now you know the difference between theta and alpha, huh? Your theta is the angle of rotation of the coordinate axis, okay? And alpha is basically your angle which this radius vector OP makes with the x dash y dash axis, okay? अब इसका मतलब if I study P in the xy plane, not in the x dash y dash plane, if I study it in the xy plane, then the angle which this radius vector makes with the x-axis is actually theta plus alpha. Right? So if you just go back to, you know, what we had done, your x can be written as, हम हमेशा क्या करते थे? In the polar coordinate system, हम क्या लिखते हैं? X is r cos theta and y is r sin theta, right? So if I say x, it will be r cos theta plus alpha, because this is the angle, total angle, which the radius vector OP is making with the x-axis, right? And similarly, your y will be r sine theta plus alpha, right? But the same thing in case of x dash y dash means your x dash will be r cos alpha and your y dash will be r sine alpha. Is this clear? Now, can you use your trigonometry knowledge here in the sense that cos theta cos of theta plus alpha can be written split?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It will be what? Cos theta cos alpha minus
sin theta sin alpha.
Right. Similarly, sin theta plus alpha can be further simplified by using
sin theta cos alpha plus cos theta sin alpha.
Okay. So now we write it again. You know this. Okay. Now you tell me. That means your x is r cos theta cos alpha minus r sin theta sin alpha. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
And your y will be r sin theta cos alpha plus r cos theta sin alpha. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
But what was your x dash? R cos alpha. And what was your y dash?
R sin alpha.
So that means I can write my x as x dash cos theta. ठीक है, लिख सकते हैं कि नहीं? Minus y dash sin theta. R sin alpha को y dash लिख दिया. And your y will be nothing but x dash sin theta plus y dash cos theta. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
So that means if I now in this case alpha is not required, right? So what have I got? I have got the transformation equations, right? Which will give me, see, that means what from these two equations, what do I have to remember? I have to remember that xy is my original system of coordinates, right? That has been rotated through an angle of theta, right? And this gives me a new system of coordinates, which we are calling as x dash y dash. And if I know theta, we can always shift from one system of coordinates to another by using these transformation equations. Is this okay? यहाँ तक तो कोई problem नहीं है ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Now we move over. अब इन equations को याद रखना पड़ेगा. Okay? X equal to x dash cos theta minus y dash sin theta, and y is equal to x dash sin theta plus y dash cos theta, because we'll be needing these equations while, you know, changing the x's system. Okay. Now we come back to the general second degree equation in x and y, which we know can be written as, if I just look at a general second degree equation, it will be something like ax square plus bxy plus cy square plus dx plus ey plus f equal to 0. ठीक है ना? This is a general second degree equation I am writing. Is this okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Why
Right.
do we need this second degree?
Because every conic section is a second degree equation.
Okay.
Right. Now, if this second degree equation, and we know this, every second degree equation will represent something like a circle or a parabola or an ellipse or a hyperbola. Depending upon, you have imposed conditions on A, B, and C to get those equations, which you have started in class 11. I'm not repeating that. Okay. What I am trying to say here is that now, if you just compare, forget about these standard equations now. Just compare this equation, which I have written just now, and the three equations that we did by completing the squares. In those three equations, did you have a term containing x and y both?
No.
No, ma'am.
थी कोई ऐसी term?
Ma'am.
No, ma'am.
नहीं थी ना? Right? So if you are given a general second degree equation and you are asked to sketch the corresponding conic, the first thing that you have to do is just see if this term is present or absent. Because if b is equal to 0, as it has happened in the earlier cases, then the x's of the conic are lines parallel to the coordinate axis, जो हमने पहले किया. Is it clear now why I'm writing this? Huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that means in those cases, if B is absent, then what you have to do is simply complete the squares and then identify what kind of a conic is it going to be, identify the center, and then sketch them completely. Okay, that means the problem will come only if b is not equal to 0. That means when you have an equation containing xy, अब इसका सबसे आसान एग्जाम्पल which you have studied, simplest of these equations, xy equal to 1, पढ़ा है ना ये? पढ़ा है कि नहीं पढ़ा, पहले ये बताओ. जल्दी बताओ.
यस मैम.
क्या है ये? क्या रिप्रेजेंट करता है?
मैम लाइन.
xy equal to 1.
हाँ मैम पैराबोला.
क्या क्या बोल रहे हो?
हम रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला.
रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला, ये तो बहुत स्टैंडर्ड इक्वेशन है ये तो, तभी मैंने ये दी. हाँ, this represents a rectangular hyperbola. What is a rectangular hyperbola? क्या होता है इसका नाम रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला क्यों पड़ा? बोलो.
मैम
Because ma'am, asymptotes are perpendicular.
Asymptotes तो किसी भी हाइपरबोला के परपेंडिकुलर होते हैं, because they are the diagonals of a square box which we have seen, and they are always perpendicular to each other.
मैम
क्या फिर से बोलो.
both axes are equal.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
X axis and y axis,
X
coordinate axis and focal axis are equal.
क्या क्या मतलब? Coordinate axes are what?
Ma'am means
For a rectangular hyperbola, what role do the coordinate axis, x-axis and y-axis, what role do they play?
semi major axis and semi minor axis are equal.
What I am asking is, in a rectangular hyperbola, what role do the coordinate axis play? अब मुझे गुस्सा चढ़ रहा है.
फोकल एक्सिस एंड कॉन्जुगेट एक्सिस.
तो फिर x स्क्वायर बाय a स्क्वायर माइनस y स्क्वायर बाय b स्क्वायर इक्वल टू 1 में क्या डिफरेंस हुआ? उसमें x एक्सिस और y एक्सिस क्या रोल प्ले करते हैं? और इसको रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला क्यों बोला? फिर इसकी इक्वेशन उस फॉर्म की क्यों नहीं है? डोंट टेल मी कि रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला नहीं पढ़ा है, बिकॉज आई एम नॉट रेडी टू एक्सेप्ट इट. अगर क्लास होती ना तो अभी तक बुरी तरह से डांट खा चुके होते तुम सबके सब, अगर सामने बैठे होते तो. हम्म पढ़ा या नहीं पढ़ा, पहले तो ये बताओ. अरे जल्दी हाँ या ना तो बोलो. बोलो जल्दी। कुछ तो जवाब दो। आता है या नहीं आता?
नो मैम।
पढ़ा है या नहीं पढ़ा?
नो मैम।
मैं पूछ रही हूँ, इतना भी बोल दो नहीं पढ़ा तो भी चलो मैं मान लूंगी एक बात को, पर जवाब तो दो। वही मैं कह रही हूँ, अब मुझे गुस्सा चढ़ रहा है तुम्हारे ऊपर। किसी ने भी नहीं पढ़ा?
नो मैम।
नो मैम।
नो मैम।
नो मैम।
मान लेती हूँ नहीं पढ़ा किसी ने भी। बेनिफिट ऑफ डाउट दे रही हूँ, जो मुझे डाउट है किसी ने नहीं पढ़ा। We call it a rectangular hyperbola because the coordinate axes are the two asymptotes. मतलब सी, जो हमारा, अगर हम देखें जनरल हाइपरबोला जो हमने पहले ट्रेस किया था y इक्वल टू प्लस माइनस एक्स में से, इसमें से ये दो लाइंस थी, ठीक है, और इस तरह का हाइपरबोला बना था, ठीक है। रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला में क्या होगा कि यू विल
फर्स्ट एंड थर्ड में मैम लाइक करते हैं।
these lines y equal to plus x as the focal axis, y equal to minus x as the conjugate axis, and the two coordinate axes are the asymptotes. ये दो ब्रांचेस बनती हैं इसकी, ये इस तरह से। दिस इज अ रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला बिकॉज इन दोनों में एकदम क्लियर दिखता है। तुमने क्या करा, इस पूरे हाइपरबोला का उठा के रोटेट कर दिया थ्रू एन एंगल ऑफ हाउ मच, 45 degrees. Can you visualize both the hyperbolas now?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
That is why we call this as the rectangular hyperbola. Okay. Now, the point is ki this term, which is called as the cross product term or the term containing x and y both, because of the presence of this term, the x's, be it like in the case of hyperbola, we have the focal and the conjugate. In case of ellipse, we are going to have major and minor. In case of parabola, we are going to have just the x's. So what happens is that because of the presence of this term, the x's are neither the coordinate axis nor are they lines which are parallel to the coordinate axis. Okay, so that means the x's now are inclined to our coordinate system. See, your original equation is in terms of xy. That means I need the sketch, I need the conic in my xy plane, but I need to trace with the help of the procedure that we have learned so far. Okay, so this is going to be slightly tricky because you will be tracing it here. अब इस केस में हम क्या कर रहे हैं, ट्रेस तो हमने xy प्लेन में किया है, बट हमारा फोकल एक्सिस कौन सा है, ये वाली लाइन। हमारा कॉन्जुगेट एक्सिस कौन सा है, ये वाली लाइन। ओके, तो हम ट्रेस हम इन लाइन की हेल्प से कर रहे हैं, बट ट्रेस कर कहाँ रहे हैं, अपने xy प्लेन में। ओके, सो व्हाट वी हैव टू डू इज बेसिकली एलिमिनेट दिस क्रॉस प्रोडक्ट टर्म। ओके, आइडेंटिफाई थीटा, कितने एंगल से रोटेट करना है हमको अपना कोऑर्डिनेट एक्सिस, एंड देन स्केच द कॉनिक. Okay, this is the procedure that we are going to follow. Okay, so what we do is, I mean, we won't go into the details, but I mean the proof, right? But then we'll use the result here that using, see again, I'm writing this general equation because it's required. Ax square plus bxy plus cy square plus dx plus ey plus f equal to 0. Okay, so what we do is we first of all find theta from here, right? So once you find theta from here, it is given by the equation that cot 2 theta is equal to a minus c upon b. Now this relationship is to be remembered by heart. Okay, that cot 2 theta is equal to a minus c upon b, right? So that means, what do I have to remember? I'm asked to sketch a conic. That means what? I'm given a general second degree equation with me. First thing I have to see is whether my equation contains a term like xy. If no, I know that the x's are parallel to the coordinate axis, whatever be the conic it is, right? Then I go on with the procedures that we have learned so far, complete the square, identify whether it's a parabola, ellipse, or a hyperbola, and then sketch it, right? That part we have learned. The thing is that if it contains bxy, then I have to identify my theta, right? So once I have identified my theta from here, then I also have equations where I can, convert. See, यही था ना हमारे पास. X was, एक बारी फिर से बोलोगे? जो मैंने पहले equations लिखवाई थी. X was how much? X dash
cos theta minus y sin theta. Y is equals to x dash sin
X
theta
dash
plus
cos theta minus y
y
dash
sin.
sin
Ma'am,
theta.
y.
No?
No, ma'am,
Yes,
y
ma'am.
dash. Y dash.
I am
Y
writing
dash.
both in terms of x dash and y dash.
Yes,
Okay?
ma'am.
And
Y
your
is
y
equal to
was किसी term से तो लिखा
Dash
था?
sin theta.
x dash sin theta.
X dash sin
Sin
theta.
theta plus y dash cos theta.
Okay. Now, once you have these equations, can you use them? I mean, this was when you are writing x and y in terms of x dash and y dash. I can use them to find x dash and y dash also in terms of x and y. Eliminate ही तो करनी है चीजें.
Yes, ma'am.
एक दूसरे की टर्म्स में लिख सकते हैं कि नहीं लिख सकते? हाँ?
Ma'am.
So, in fact, if you simplify it, if this you can try it yourself. If you simplify, you will see that you can write x dash as x cos theta plus y sin theta and y dash as minus x sin theta plus y cos theta. You can try it yourself. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So what we do is, once we have identified theta, right? So either we use these equations or we use these equations. And in fact, it's always better to use this system of equations, because what will happen is that once you have identified your theta, you substitute in these two equations. So what will you get? You will get your x and y in terms of x dash and y dash. थीटा तो अब आ गया हमारे पास. Is it okay or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So once you have obtained your x and y in terms of x dash and y dash, you substitute in your given equation. Okay. So what will happen is, you will get a new equation in terms of x dash and y dash. That means you will get something like some new coefficient will come with x dash square. And as a result, what will happen is that this term bxy will be eliminated automatically. because we are choosing our theta in such a manner that this term gets removed. Okay, so you will have an equation, but in terms of x dash and x dash square, y dash square, x dash, y dash. So you'll have terms like this. Okay, so that means like अभी इसी में ही देख लो. Say हमारे पास क्या था? Rectangular hyperbola मैंने लिया अपना. क्या थी इक्वेशन? xy equal to 1. ये इक्वेशन ली ना मैंने?
Yes, ma'am.
Now compare it with your general second degree equation. So how much is capital A? Or
0.
you can write this equation as xy minus 1 equal to 0. Right? How much is 0? A? Because there is no x square. So my A is 0. How much is B?
1.
1. 0. Because there is no y square. Then there is no x. That is why D is also 0. There is no y. So F is also 0. But you have a constant term. So your E is minus 1.
मैम आपने ई वाई में घुमाया था.
क्या?
Yes, ma'am. EY.
EY tha. Oh, sorry. Yes, yes. So E is 0 and F is minus 1. Bxy, cy square, dx, ey and f is the constant term. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you have these values. So what will be cot 2 theta? What is that equal to? A minus C upon B?
0.
0, ma'am.
Now, the only care that we have to take is that my theta should be between 0 and pi by 2. क्योंकि अगर हम अपने एक्सिस को रोटेट कर रहे हैं तो ज्यादा इसको उठा के यहां तक ही तो ला पा सकते हैं. अदरवाइज तो क्या हो गया? जो हमारा एक्स एक्सिस था वो वाई एक्सिस बन जाएगा. अगर हम इस पूरे वाई एक्सिस इसको पूरा 90 डिग्री रोटेट कर देंगे तो क्या हो जाएगा कि हमारी जो हॉरिजॉन्टल एक्सिस थी वो वर्टिकल बन गई और जो वर्टिकल थी वो हॉरिजॉन्टल बन जाएगी, है ना? So we normally take care that our theta always lies between 0 and pi by 2. So if 2 theta is 0, so how much is, cot 2 theta is 0. So how much is 2 theta?
90 degree.
90 degree. That means how much?
Theta is
5 by 4.
5 by 4. So that means we have to rotate our coordinate axis through an angle of 45 degrees. Is that okay? Now
Yes,
you know your theta now. Now come back to your transformation equations in terms of x dash and y dash. So what will be x in terms of x dash and y dash? क्या थी equation x की? X dash cos theta
Yes, minus R.
minus y dash sin theta.
Sin theta.
ठीक है ना? Now theta is how much? Pi by 4.
x dash by root 2.
X dash by root 2 minus y dash by root 2. This is your x now. So what will be your y?
X dash by
X dash
X dash by root by y dash by root 2.
Plus y dash by root 2. ठीक है?
Yes.
यहां तक ठीक है? अब तुम्हारी इक्वेशन कॉनिक की है क्या? xy equal to 1. Now substitute this x and this y in this equation and get a new equation in terms of x dash and y dash. Matlab, what we are doing now is my equation will be now x dash by root 2 minus y dash by root 2 into x dash by root 2 plus y dash by root 2 equal to 1. ये बन जाएगी ना इक्वेशन अब?
Yes, ma'am.
अब इसको सिंप्लीफाई करो तो क्या बन गई?
X dash square by 2
x dash square
and
by
y dash square by 2
equal to 1.
equal to 1. अब पता लगा क्योंकि यहां ए और बी दोनों सेम हैं, इसीलिए उसको रेक्टेंगुलर हाइपरबोला बोलते हैं। ठीक है, बट अब जो तुम्हें ध्यान रखना है, क्योंकि अब हमको इसको स्केच करना है। अब यहां से तो आ गया कि हमारा ए स्क्वायर 2 है, बी स्क्वायर भी 2 है, तो जो हमारा बॉक्स बनेगा दैट विल बी अ स्क्वायर, रेक्टेंगल नहीं बनेगा, क्योंकि हम लेफ्ट राइट अप डाउन इक्वल यूनिट्स ट्रेवल करेंगे ना।
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you
Yes,
getting
ma'am.
the point? Right. So that means
Yes,
your
ma'am.
A will be root 2 and B will also be root 2. अब देखो, अब इसको अपनी जनरल इक्वेशन ऑफ हाइपरबोला के साथ कंपेयर करो। क्या थी वो? एक्स स्क्वायर बाय ए स्क्वायर माइनस वाई स्क्वायर बाय बी स्क्वायर इक्वल टू 1।
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है ना, तो इसका मतलब वैसी हो गई। इसका मतलब हमारा सेंटर क्या है अब? ओरिजिन
0,0.
0,0।
0.
ठीक है, बट हमारे एक्सेस तो चेंज हो गए। सी, तुमको जो इक्वेशन प्लॉट करनी है वो एक्स वाई इक्वल टू 1 की करनी है। तुमने क्या करा कि अपने एक्स वाई के लिए न्यू कोऑर्डिनेट सिस्टम ऑफ एक्सेस डिफाइन कर दिए, एक्स डैश वाई डैश। ठीक है, बट इन दोनों में रिलेशन है। अगर मैं एक्स डैश वाई डैश सिस्टम ऑफ कोऑर्डिनेट और एक्स वाई सिस्टम ऑफ कोऑर्डिनेट को कंपेयर करूं तो ये दोनों तो आपस में रिलेटेड हैं। कैसे? कि उनका ओरिजिन फिक्स्ड है, सिर्फ हमने उसको घुमाना है। कितने डिग्री? थीटा। थीटा कितना था? 45 डिग्री। इसका मतलब जब मैं इसको स्केच करूंगी तो मेरे पास कहीं ना कहीं मेरा एक्स वाई एक्सेस भी चाहिए मुझे, क्योंकि मुझे प्लॉट तो इसी में करना है। बट मुझे हेल्प किसकी लेनी पड़ रही है? एक्स डैश वाई डैश एक्सिस की। अब एक्स डैश वाई डैश एक्सिस का भी ओरिजिन तो यही है। इसका मतलब ये मेरी एक और एक्सिस आ गई, एक्स डैश, और ये आ गई वाई डैश इसके परपेंडिकुलर। ठीक है, कैसे? इन दोनों में क्या रिलेशन है कि ये एंगल 45 डिग्री है। अब क्या करो, जैसे ही तुमने ये प्लॉट कर लिए, अब अपनी कॉपी टेढ़ी कर लो। मतलब कि इसको इस तरह से टेढ़ा कर लो कि ये जो एक्स डैश है, अब ये तुम्हारा हॉरिजॉन्टल बन जाए और वाई डैश जो है वो तुम्हारा वर्टिकल बन जाए। कर ली?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है। अब वैसे ही अब ये तुम्हारा सेंटर हो गया। ठीक है, अब ए कितना जाना है?
Root 2.
रूट 2। तो इधर इधर रूट 2 और इधर रूट 2, बी भी रूट 2, इधर रूट 2, इधर रूट 2। तो यहां बॉक्स बनेगा ना अब हमारा इस तरह से। ये मैंने थोड़ा सा गलत बनाया, एक्चुअली इसके डायगोनल्स यही होंगे, एक्स और वाई। थोड़ा सा मैंने गलत बना दिया बॉक्स। अगर तुम अब बिल्कुल मेजर करके बनाओगे ना ग्राफ पेपर पे, so you will see that this is what your box is, something like this, something like this, इस तरह से बनेगा। उसमें अपने ये जब तुम उसके डायगोनल्स बनाओगे, you will see that the diagonals are nothing but your x axis and the y axis।
ma'am.
Yes,
ठीक है,
ma'am.
ठीक है ना। अब उसमें ये अपना हाइपरबोला बना दो, ये रहा और ये रहा, that's it, this is your rectangular hyperbola x y equal to 1।
मम्मी स्केचिंग हमें ग्राफ कॉपी में करनी है।
समझ आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा?
Yes, ma'am.
आ रहा है। अच्छा, ये वैसे मैंने एकदम शुरू ही टफ हाइपरबोला से शुरू कर दिया। लेट्स ट्राई अ सिंपलर वन। वैसे अगर आएगा तो एग्जाम में तो हाइपरबोला ही आना चाहिए आइडियली, बट यू नेवर नो। लेट्स ट्राई समथिंग लाइक दिस। ये ले लो।
Can you once again go to the previous slide?
हाँ बोलो। हाँ
Okay.
ठीक है। वैसे ये एग्जाम्पल है, दिस इज इंटरेस्टिंग, इसी को ही ट्राई करो। थोड़ा सा नंबर डराने वाला लगेगा बट है नहीं, डरने की जरूरत नहीं है। इसको लिखो +97 y²। अब ये तुम खुद करोगे। लिख ली इक्वेशन।
Yes, ma'am.
153x² minus 192xy plus 97y² minus 30x minus 40y minus 200 equal to 0। ठीक है जी। अब xy की टर्म तो है, तो इसका मतलब एक्सिस जो है वो पैरेलल नहीं है कोऑर्डिनेट एक्सिस के। ठीक है, तो हमें थीटा निकालना पड़ेगा। ठीक है, अब इसमें इसलिए कह रही हूं कि ये इंटरेस्टिंग है, इसमें थीटा निकालना इंटरेस्टिंग है, इसीलिए मैंने ये प्रॉब्लम लिया। पहले वाले केस में थीटा निकालना आसान था। ठीक है, हाँ जी, अब आ जाओ। हम क्या करते हैं, cot 2 थीटा इज इक्वल टू व्हाट। अब अपने ए बी सी डी ई एफ सब आइडेंटिफाई कर लो। कर लिए?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है, अब नाउ योर cot 2 थीटा इज a माइनस सी अपॉन बी। ठीक है, कितना आया?
56 upon minus 19.
-56 अपॉन 192। इसको थोड़ा सा और सिंप्लीफाई कर सकते हो ना,
-7/24।
-7/24। ठीक है, अब प्रॉब्लम आ गई, क्या करें? अब थोड़ी सी अपनी ट्रिग्नोमेट्री यूज करो। आई एम गिविंग यू अ हिंट, यू डू इट योरसेल्फ। इसमें प्रॉब्लम ऐसे ऐसे आएंगे, प्रॉब्लम्स आ सकते हैं, यू कैन एंड अप विद प्रॉब्लम्स लाइक दिस। आई एम गिविंग यू अ हिंट, वी नीड थीटा। Using cot 2 theta, find cos 2 theta. And using cos 2 theta, find cos theta and sin theta.
मैम हम वो फॉर्मूला डायरेक्ट नहीं यूज कर सकते, cos थीटा इक्वल √1 प्लस cos 2 थीटा अपॉन 2।
By the question, obvious question could be कि why cos theta and sin theta both. I mean, using any knowledge of trigonometry, cos 2 theta निकालना चाहते हो या नहीं निकालना चाहते, तुम्हें जो काम आसान लगता है, we ultimately need the values of cos theta and sin theta because my x and y are defined in terms of x dash cos theta, y dash sin theta. इसी तरह की terms है ना हमारे पास। So what I mean to say here is we need not know the complete, I mean, we need not just know theta. What we ultimately need to know are the values of cos theta and sin theta. तो अगर थीटा नहीं भी निकल रहा तो कोई बात नहीं, हम अपनी ट्रिग्नोमेट्री की नॉलेज से कम कॉस थीटा और साइन थीटा का वैल्यू तो निकाल सकते हैं, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली तो हमें वही चाहिए। आर यू गेटिंग द पॉइंट?
यस मैम।
राइट, सो नाउ यूज योर बेसिक नॉलेज and give me the values of cos theta and sin theta.
मैम कोट 2 थीटा -5/12 आ रहा है।
Ma'am, cos theta will be 3/5 and sin theta will be 4/5.
हाँ जी, ये कौन बोला?
Ma'am, Hina.
ही ना बोली, ठीक है. अच्छा, उससे
Ma'am,
पहले
if we substitute this x is equals to x dash, I mean x is equals to 3 by 5 x dash minus 4 by 5 y dash, ऐसे ही करना है ना हमें इसे?
हाँ, of course, you have to find x and y now back in terms of x dash and y dash.
So
But
we'll clearly substitute these values here in these equations. Okay.
that's right. Because we need those transformations. So
Yeah,
we need.
okay.
नहीं जी, cot 2 theta तो -7/24 ही आ रहा है.
बट cos 2 थीटा अगर हम उससे निकालेंगे बाय ट्रायंगल तो वो -7/25 हो जाएगा.
Yeah, that's right.
एंड उसके बाद अगर हम cos थीटा इज इक्वल्स टू √1 + cos 2 थीटा अपॉन 2 फॉर्मूला लगाएंगे देन इट विल बी 3/5 ओनली.
So cos theta is 3/5 and
And
sin
sin theta is be 4/5.
Now substitute x and y in terms of x dash and y dash. So what are the equations that you are getting now?
X is equals to 3/5 x dash
X is equal to 3/5 x dash
minus 4/5 y dash.
and
And y is equals to 4/5 x dash plus 3/5 y dash.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now
Yes.
substitute these x and y in your given equation. जो वो बड़ी वाली थी. And then finally get an equation in terms of x dash and y dash. अब ये एक्सरसाइज और करो. यहां तक तो क्लियर है ना सबको?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. Now substitute these values of x and y in your given equation and get a new equation in x dash and y dash. इसमें टाइम लगेगा पर गलती नहीं होनी चाहिए कोई.
Ma'am, x dash square.
क्या फिर से बोलो.
x dash square plus 9y dash square minus 2x dash minus 8.
x dash square minus, oh sorry, plus, है ना?
Yes. 9y dash
y
square
dash square, हाँ,
minus 2x dash
हाँ,
minus 8 is equals to 0.
0. Okay, now this is correct. It's not wrong. Now see for yourself. There is no term containing x dash y dash. It has automatically been eliminated. That is because we used this transformation with an appropriate value of theta so that it gets eliminated. Okay. Now, if you compare this equation with the kind of equations that we have done before, you have x dash square, you have y dash square, so it's not a parabola. So it's either going to be an ellipse or a hyperbola. And because with both x dash square and y dash square, you have a plus sign. So it is going to be an ellipse. So what we do is, we simply, again, जैसे पहले किया था, complete the squares.
X dash minus 1 whole square.
X dash
minus 1
minus 1 whole square
Upon 9.
upon 9
Plus y square is equal to 1.
y dash square is equal to 1. So basically, this means that what ellipse that you are going to get is x dash minus 1 whole square upon 9 plus y dash square upon 1 is equal to 1. यही मतलब हुआ ना? इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? Your
A is equal to
is minus 1 0, but minus 1 0 किस coordinate plane में?
On the x-axis negative.
no x dash y dash 1.
x dash y dash plane में. अब समझ में आ रहा है? ठीक है? A is 3, B is 1. इसका मतलब अब क्या, क्योंकि हमारे पास थीटा, सी पहले केस में क्या हुआ था, हमारे पास थीटा बिल्कुल क्लियर आ गया था 45 डिग्री, तो वी कुड सी. अब हमारे पास थीटा एज सच बहुत क्लियरली नहीं आया है, बट वी नो कि अगर ये मेरा एक्स वाई प्लेन है, ठीक है, तो यहां पे कहीं एक्स डैश वाई डैश भी है. ये x dash y dash, and we just need some rough sketch. कोई तुम्हें नहीं कह रहा कि बिल्कुल प्रॉपर होना चाहिए. This is theta, where you have seen that cos theta is something and sin theta is something. उससे थीटा निकाल सकते हैं, ये नहीं कि हम नहीं निकाल सकते, बट उसकी जरूरत नहीं है हमें. ठीक है? अब क्या करना है, फिर वैसे ही मैंने जैसे पहले समझाया था, अपनी कॉपी टेढ़ी कर लो, so that your x dash becomes your horizontal axis and your y dash becomes your vertical axis. अब तुम्हारा सेंटर कहाँ आ रहा है? -1 0. इसका मतलब इस
1, 0
1 0.
सेंटर 1,
तो
मैम
इसका
1
मतलब,
0.
हाँ समझ गई बेटा, समझ गई. इसका मतलब अब ये हमारी एक्स एक्सिस हो गई ना. इस एक्सिस पे मेरे को अपना एक पॉइंट आइडेंटिफाई करना है 1 0, जो मेरा सेंटर बनेगा. ठीक है? अब ए कितना था?
3.
3. ठीक है ना? तो इसका मतलब इसके राइट पे 3 यूनिट्स,
Yes.
1 2 3, और इसके लेफ्ट पे 3 यूनिट्स, 1 2 and 3. ठीक है ना? और बी कितना था? 1. इसका मतलब अप नाउ 1 यूनिट्स. ठीक है? तो अब ये तुम्हारा जो बॉक्स बनेगा, समथिंग लाइक दिस. इसको तुम टेढ़ा करके ही बना रहे हो ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. But now this is your center. 1 0. ठीक है ना? तो अब इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? ये एलिप्स तो कुछ इस तरह का बनेगा ना, समथिंग लाइक दिस. ये एलिप्स बनेगा इस बॉक्स के अंदर. इज इट ओके?
Yes ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ, ठीक है ना? So this is ellipse. So this is how we are going to sketch. मेरे को अब आज मैं और ज्यादा नहीं करा रही, बिकॉज this you have a lot to do now. So you'll be able to do 10.4 and 10.5 from N10. 10.5 तो फिर भी छोटी सी एक्सरसाइज है, तो ऑलमोस्ट सारे कर ही लो, एटलीस्ट टिल फर्स्ट 30 प्रॉब्लम्स. बट 10.4 में यू नीड नॉट डू all because उसमें reflection properties वाले मत करो बेशक. So what you can do is, I think, try till question number 30 first and then question number 53 from 10.4. बाकी सब रहने दो. Okay, but 10.5.
Can you repeat, ma'am?
10.4 first 30 problems 30 and then question number 53, but 10.5 again first 30 problems.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so try these problems and
Ma'am,
maybe